of October, a lot to dive into. Let's welcome in the triple threat as we start counting down to week 5 across the board in the NFL. It's Raheem Palmer, Joe House, and John Jastremski. Before, gentlemen, we recap what we saw on Monday Night Football, before we get to the Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons, House, we have not done a little conversation here on FanDuel TV since the Karl-Anthony Towns, Julius Randle blockbuster went down. You know, it's funny, Raheem put it on our group chat. I wanted to make sure he wasn't getting punked. I wanted to make sure it was a real source. Of course it was. The Knicks going against somebody that they've been linked to for a long time. We know the good and the bad with Karl-Anthony Towns. They get out of the Randle contract. You know I'm sick about losing DiVincenzo. I'll give my thoughts last on this, but I want to start with you guys. House, does this change the way for better, worse, or no change when it comes to your feelings on the Knicks going into the season?
Yeah, it sure does. I think the Knicks got much better, and they kind of addressed two things. If you believe that what they're trying to do is catch up to and hopefully surpass the Boston Celtics, then this move put them in prime position to do so for a couple reasons. In the first place, the version of the Celtics that the Eastern Conference is going to face this upcoming year is going to be, in my humble opinion, a very dramatically different version of the Celtics, both because a lot of the Jason Tatum coming off the Olympics and just the overall, the sheer number of games when you go through a finals like that. The next season, you start out a little bit slower. It's a different kind of energy altogether. Derek White and Mr. Holiday as well at the Olympics. I knew I would get there. It's not quite NBA season yet, fellas. I knew I would get there. But all those guys at the Olympics coming back, and of course Porzingis being out, and you can get competing rumors about when he's going to come back. But what Karl-Anthony Towns does for the Knicks is put them in prime position to deal with the size deficiency that they were going to be confronted with by losing Isaiah Hartenstein, and they're immediately in the same place in terms of the stretch big shooting. It's a great solution in terms of that piece of it. So I love it for the Knicks. I think it's a tremendous acquisition, Dree.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. If you look at the Knicks last year, per cleaning the glass, they were 16th in half-court offensive rating, 98 points per 100 possessions. In lineups with Randle on the floor, the Knicks had a half-court offensive rating of 101. You have to imagine when you get rid of a ball stopper like Julius Randle. I mean, Julius Randle, he stops the ball. He's not a guy who is going to be second in command to Jalen Brunson. Karl-Anthony Towns can catch and shoot, and you have to imagine with him on the floor, this is going to get them to a top 10 offensive rating in the half court, and I think that makes them scary. If you look at all of the moves that the Knicks made this summer, I mean, you got to praise God for competent GMs because they essentially swapped Hartenstein, Dante DiVincenzo, and Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. So you got two guys on the wing with Bridges and OG, and then you have a stretch 5 with Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, I think this makes them legit contenders. However, I think Joel Embiid is going to have a field day with that front court. But against the Boston Celtics, I think they're in prime position.
So I've thought a lot about this trade, guys. And my initial reaction was, I'm bummed to trade DiVincenzo. He was so much fun last year. He had that epic game 2 against the Sixers. He's having 40-point playoff performances. But it kind of brought me back, guys, to where the Knicks were about a year and a half ago when they traded away 2 popular players, Emmanuel Quickley and R.J. Barrett for OG Anunoby, where it was pretty obvious Knicks got the best player in the trade. You look at this deal, and I have been crystal clear on this, get Randle off the Knicks sooner rather than later because Raheem pointed out the ball stopping that he brings to the table. I think in the postseason, he has hurt the Knicks. We saw that against Atlanta. We definitely saw it with Spoelstra exploiting him when they played Miami 2 years ago. And the floor spacing is going to be dramatically better with Karl-Anthony Towns shooting the 3 as opposed to Julius Randle clogging it up. So I'm with you guys on this. The Knicks are a better team after this trade. We'll see how Towns matches up with the other centers within the Eastern Conference. But I like the Knicks more than I did about 48, 72 hours ago. So we're on the same page with that. Now, Raheem, the other way to look at this, Minnesota. Minnesota's been dying to get out of that Towns contract for a while. Randall, they can let walk at the end of the year, but when you have Anthony Edwards on your team, you're thinking every year is a championship window. After all, they were in the Western Conference Finals a year ago. Their bench is better. Randall swapped in for Towns. I'll ask you the same question I asked you with the Knicks. You like the T-Wolves more, less, or about the same?
This is tough for me because I don't like the idea that the Minnesota Timberwolves had probably one of the best seasons we've seen from them in the last 30 years. I mean, you pretty much have to go back to 2004 when Kevin Garnett won the MVP and took them to the Western Conference Finals to find a season that the Minnesota Timberwolves had. And to blow it up like this in order to save salary, I find it a little bit depressing. Unfortunately, I'm not a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, but I would be angry at this move, personally. I think, Karl-Anthony Towns, he was starting to work himself into, a role, and I think he was playing well. I mean, now he had some, stinkers in the postseason, but I think you got to let this team run it back. Now, the one thing I will say is that Naz Reid and his play last year has made Karl-Anthony Towns expendable. So they felt like they could save some money by getting rid of him while keeping his production. And Julius Randle comes off the books. So, all the issues with the new CBA and the new second Abram and all the tax stuff. So I can understand why they made the move, but I just don't think you get rid of a talent like Karl-Anthony Towns when you had that season.
Yeah, Dream just used the word blow up, and I'm not sure that I agree with that characterization of this. The one big question is chemistry experiment-wise. We saw Minnesota with the ability to present a ferocious defensive front, and that ferocious defense now has taken 2 hits. Both Kyle Anderson is gone, and Cat is gone. Now, nobody says that that nobody makes the mistake of thinking of Cat as a defensive wizard, but for the purposes of the chemistry of last season's version of Minnesota, he knew his role. They figured out his role. It made sense. They for sure shut down the Denver Nuggets, and that was their goal and intention. I think that they are still in fine shape because I think they are the deepest team in the West now by virtue of this trade. And I do think that, it puts a lot of pressure on Naz Reid. We're probably going to see 26 to 32 minutes out of Naz Reid. It could be the case. I mean, that's a bump up from like the 24 minutes or so that he got the previous season. But the versatility of what Julius Randle brings to the table offensively should translate into taking some pressure off of Anthony Edwards, should translate into especially second unit versatility. Holy cow, Julius Randle going up against second units. And then to me, the crucial thing, and JJ, I understand why your heart hurts, DiVincenzo as the backup to Mike Conley is enormous. It's humongous. I can't overstate how important that addition is to this team and what their options are on the offensive end come playoff time. So I think it's a win-win for both teams, JJ.
Yeah, and listen,
House, I got a question. So do you think Minnesota wins 56 games again?
Yes, I do. I do think that.
And that's because of depth and the Anthony Edwards factor more than anything else.
Yes, that is exactly what I think.
Here's a concern I have for them, Raheem. The idea of Gobert playing alongside Randall, that to me is something that I think could be a little problematic. Now, Towns, to his credit, found a way to make it work, played on the outside. Obviously, he's a 40% three-point shooter. I'm wondering with that fit with Gobert and Randall. And again, it doesn't have to be long-term because they could easily let Randall walk at the end of the year. That to me could be a little clunky from a Timberwolves standpoint.
Yeah, but if there's anybody who can figure it out, it's Chris Finch. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the league. He figured it out. I mean, it was a little clunky that first year with Gobert. The next year, they're in the Western Conference Finals. So I have faith in Chris Finch and that coaching staff. And you got to remember, Julius is an expiring contract. So if it doesn't work, they can get rid of him at the deadline.
Easily could be moved for a piece in January or February that kind of suits exactly what they need. Excellent point. So House, you're on record win-win. I'm going to say slight edge to the Knicks because I know what I'm getting going into the year, where I don't think I know what I'm getting with Minnesota. And I know some of the townspeople are going to say, JJ, you worried about his makeup? You worried about whether or not he can handle New York? Yes, that's a part of the calculus, but nobody knows him better than his former agent, Leon Rose. And Tom Thibodeau also had him, and for Thibodeau to sign off on the idea of bringing him back, Raheem, I like that much more. Because you know Tibbs, you got to be wired a certain way to play for him. If Tibbs was like, this dude can't play for me, this deal doesn't go down. You know what I mean? It doesn't go down.
That was definitely a concern because, Karl-Anthony Towns does not seem like a Tibbs guy. I mean, they seem like polar opposites. So we're going to see how that turns out.
Well, listen, it's great for us because to me, it's the number one move that was made in this NBA offseason. And now it kind of gives the early season intrigue to how the Knicks are going to look, who a feel-good story in the league the last 2 years, how Minnesota's going to look after their big-time season from a year ago. So you like the idea of some of those October, November games being a little bit under the microscope. All right, we transition from the NBA. Guys, let's get to Monday Night Football quickly. We're not wasting any time on the Dolphins and the Titans. My team is beyond done. They are Larry Holmes status. There's nothing to say. Mike McDaniel, you should be thanking your lucky stars for 2 of the last 2 years. For all the Tua hate and slander that I see on social media, watch the Dolphins play offense without him. They're an absolute disgrace and an embarrassment. I don't even want you guys, if you guys want to weigh in, it's fine. But I want to hit you on this, House, because it's way more relevant and it's far more important. Detroit the other night, dominant offensively. Goff, perfect. Looking like the Lion team that I think all 3 of us envision saying, you know what? If this team's at home in the month of January and Ben Johnson's drawing up plays like this and they got these ferocious offensive linemen and the play calling and the hard-nosed running, that, to me, House, for the first time all year, looked like the Detroit Lions we saw from last year.
I totally agree. It is the version of the Lions that, had us putting them in the conversation as one of the final 4, right? You expect them to be right there in the NFC with San Francisco. And we've been waiting for this performance by Goff. And, there was starting to be a little bit of concern going 3 games in that he continued to look rusty. He continued to look slow in his decision-making. Well, whatever happened in Arizona where they ran the ball 43 times, it must have caught his attention. He came back home. They ran a beautiful offense. I mean, the interesting thing is not even 20 attempts, right? But it was so efficient. 18 for 18. If you're perfect, then you don't need to throw the ball any more than that. They did take advantage of a Seattle defense on the front 7 that had injuries, but, I'm not making excuses. They handled their business. They did what they're supposed to do. I was also impressed by Seattle. And the only thing I would say is I love those games. Can we have Seattle and Detroit play every season? Well, they're fireworks, man.
They really
That's
do.
great.
I mean, my goodness, boys, you compare that game, and I'll watch them both because I'm at the Dolphin-Titan game, and I had the Lion game on my phone. And I'm like, oh, my God, this game, it's got trick plays. It's got all sorts of scoring. It's all sorts of fun. And then I'm watching Mason Rudolph and Snoop Huntley, and I'm like, Raheem,
it's like 2 different
the
sports.
same sport? I know.
Seattle Seahawks defense was they were so injured. So I just need to see a little bit more from the Lions because that defense is awful.
Well, and that's the thing with Seattle. They put up some great defensive numbers the first 3 weeks. And you mentioned some of the injuries they had coming into Monday night, Raheem. But let's also not ignore the schedule they played over the first 3 weeks, where it was Skylar Thompson and one of the worst offenses in the NFL in the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that, with Tyreek and Waddle and Achane and all those guys. One of the worst offenses in the NFL. Denver, who is dreadful on offense. And New England, who is dreadful on offense. So I know Mike McDonald's a tremendous defensive coach. That defense got exposed a little bit on Monday night. They did.
I don't think they got exposed. I just think they were banged up. And I think they were in a bad spot. And I think once they get healthy, you'll see them start to come together. I think, it's just every team is going to have its peaks and valleys for the NFL season. And I think, eventually you're going to see this Seattle Seahawks defense come together.
The one thing I'll just say about the Seattle defense quickly is at least they don't have to play Detroit every week. I mean, Detroit is loaded. They've got weapons at every level at every position, and Seattle's defense will look better when they get to go play the Rams and some of the other teams on the schedule.
All right, we got a lot more football to get to. Gave you a little NBA appetizer right out of the gate, but now we're ready to get the juices flowing for Week 5. We'll get to Thursday night. It's a pretty intriguing game in the NFC South. The NFC South, it might have more wins than we thought maybe at the beginning of the year. I don't think it's going to be a particularly great division, but I don't think it's going to be a particularly bad division. But Atlanta, Tampa, we got plays, we got thoughts. They're coming your way next. All right, welcome back. Let's get to Thursday Night Football, gentlemen. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after their dominant wire-to-wire win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Baker Mayfield looked lights out. Tampa's defense frustrated Jalen Hurts. Tampa off to a very nice 3-1 start on the year. They go on the road to take on an Atlanta team that I feel like we've seen a lot of. It's weird how an NFL season works where certain teams get a lot of primetime exposure, House, and I feel like I'm well-versed on the Falcons. I watched them intently against the Chiefs. We all watched them intently against the Eagles. I had them as you are. We had the Steelers against them, I should say, Week 1 against Atlanta. So I feel like, all right, I have a good vibe. I have a good feel on the Atlanta Falcons. They beat New Orleans in dramatic fashion. This line kind of opened in the 3 range. It's down now to 1.5. Are you looking at this game and saying good buy low spot for the Falcons? Or what Tampa has done starting off the year, does that maybe sound the alarm and saying, hey, Tampa getting the points here, market moving with them is the way we should be riding with this game?
So this one is tough because of the injury questions and the short work week here. My inclination is to go with Tampa, but Tampa has 3 guys on their offensive line listed as questionable. The receiver room is so banged up, they signed Sterling Shepard to the active roster. And, they're coming in. If they have most of those guys, then I prefer Tampa, because Atlanta also suffering from the injury bug, and most prominently their leading tackler. I said it right. Troy Anderson, 44 tackles, so he's out. And there's other injuries. They don't have their center, their right tackle on the offensive line, and Kirk Cousins under pressure, as we know, is bad. So if Tampa can bring pressure, then I like Tampa. But overall, I've been more impressed with Tampa than Atlanta. Atlanta's can't score. They just won a football game without an offensive touchdown. Good job with their defense and special teams, producing some points against the Saints, a division rival, an important game. But I kind of want to stay away from this game. You could do under, it's another primetime under. It's a Kirk Cousins under. There's a bunch of trends that support under. The total there's 43.5. But picking a side's tough, Dream.
This one's really tough, House. I think you hit the nail on the head because, the Falcons, they really struggle to score. They're down a couple of offensive linemen who are questionable returns. So you need to watch out for that. But last week's game against the Saints, it was really tough for the Falcons. They were outgained by 50 yards, third downs, 54% to 36%, rushing yards, 131 to 88, drive points. They could not score a touchdown like House said. So I look at this game and I'm right on market. My model makes this Atlanta Falcons -2.5 just because of the home field advantage. But I like what the Buccaneers bring to the table. I think they're going to throw some blitzes at Kirk Cousins, and I think they're going to be able to knock him off his spot. So I do lean towards the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you look at these teams by touchdown draw percentage, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the 8th best offense, about 29% of their drives in a touchdown. Atlanta, 14%. That's the 17th worst offense. And I actually think, from a totals perspective, I think you could be looking at a sneaky over here because I think, I think Tampa Bay is going to be able to score on this defense, and I think the Falcons, if they get any regression here, this will probably go over 43.5. But that's my leans for this, and I also will probably look at some Chris Godwin props. He leads the team in targets, about 38 targets. I mean, he's dominating. So I think he could have a big day here. I'll probably go over his yards.
Oh, I love it. You read my mind with Chris Godwin, Raheem. He's off to a great start this year. He's getting a lot of volume. Clearly, they're looking to incorporate him in the offense. And I like the over in this game. I think we're going to have points here. I think Atlanta's offense, that, yes, has been underwhelming over the first month of the year, I think they're getting an opponent that they can maybe take advantage of with the idea of the injuries in that secondary. And you throw in the fact that, hey, you got Bijan Robinson being able to run the football. Atlanta maybe getting more and more comfortable with each passing week. I think we get a better offensive game from them. And I almost look at it, House, and I don't love this play, because I think any of these NFC South games, I said it last week with Saints and with Falcons, where it was just like, don't want to go near this one. You know it's going to be tight. You know it's going to be within the number. Saints covered the number. Falcons ended up winning the game on a last-second field goal. I kind of can see a similar script here in this game, and I know it's a little bit of a cop-out. Is anybody going to be surprised if this game is tied with 2.5 minutes to play? It feels like all of these NFC South games outside of Carolina are super, super tight. I lean with the home team. If I had to play this game, I think I would take Atlanta, just because I think Tampa might be a little overvalued here in this spot. They've been impressive. I had them last week against Philly, but now they're going on a road, short week. I think Atlanta, a lot of people, they're out on Atlanta. They saw what they saw in these primetime games. I know they beat the Eagles, but I think people realize, hey, they should have lost to the Eagles. They lost to Kansas City. A lot of zagging, House, with the Falcons. I'm going to zag the other way here. I'm holding my nose. I don't love it. If I had to play this game, give me Atlanta laying 1.5.
You said the right thing. I mean, this very easily could be, last 4 minutes and a field goal decides it. I just don't know which side I would choose between the two.
Anthony DeBundo has like the best theory on the NFC South, and he says take the underdog in every game, and you'll probably come out ahead. And last week was funny between the Saints and the Falcons, because the Falcons were -1.5 or -1, and it closed -2.5. So you actually could have won on both sides of the game, depending on when you got the number. And it wouldn't surprise me if the same thing happens here. But I lean towards Tampa. I think, Tampa Bay, they're playing really well. Baker, you'll know if he has it within the first 5 minutes. And I think he can carve up this defense. And I think they could throw a blitz at Kirk Cousins and knock him off his spot.
And Raheem, let me make this clear. If you like Atlanta, take the money line. With the way these games end up, are we going to be stunned if it's a 1-point game? I'm not. Like, to me, there are certain instances where if you're seeing that line under 3, it might be worth the premium to go and pay for the money line. That's something I would do here with Atlanta. If I'm taking Atlanta, I am not laying the 1.5 and getting burned if this game ends up being as wacky as Sunday's Saints-Falcon game ended up being,
Perfectly reasonable. Yeah. Perfectly
take
reasonable.
Take the money line, guys. You like the Falcons. If you're riding with me in this game, take the money line. All right, we got a lot more coming your way. We got a little house divided here for this Falcon-Buccaneer Thursday night game. Not really a surprise, because it's a toss-up game. It's the wacky, chaotic NFC South. We got some games I don't think we're going to be so divided on. I don't know. I have not rearranged any thoughts and notes and picks with the three amigos.
I think we're going to be divided. I think we're going to be divided this week.
Oh, do you really? You call that a tease, by the way, in the podcast television business. Raheem thinks we're going to be divided on a couple of these games. I think there might be more unison than you think. Anyway, the East Coast Bias Boys with the rest of the Week 5 card. It's coming your way next. All right, welcome back. We have London games for the first time this year, and it's a good one. It's a real good game, Raheem. The Jets, after disgustingly choking that game away against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, they go to London. Aaron Rodgers a little beat up. Some communication issues between Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh. That's been playing out in the New York media over the course of the week. Jets grabbing 2.5 against the feel-good story in the NFL. The outstanding coaching of Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, the resurgent Sam Darnold, and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Raheem, you know where Sam Darnold was drafted. And I know it wasn't by Joe Douglas, and it feels like it was, another lifetime ago in a galaxy far, far away. But we have ourselves a Sam Darnold revenge spot. Aaron Rodgers, not great playing in London. I think back on that Giant game a couple of years ago where it was a monstrous favorite. He lost the game outright. London game, everybody's watching. There's going to be some additional volume on this one. Where do we stand with the Jets getting 2.5?
Oh, I don't like this game at all. At all. And I think this is Jets or pass. Last week on the Ringer pregame show, I took the Minnesota Vikings on the money line. House took the Minnesota Vikings team total over. Well, if you look at this game, I know the Jets defense hasn't been great, but this will probably be one of the best defenses they've played all year. I mean, last week they beat up on the Packers. They beat up on the Texans. We know that they beat the 49ers, but they were a little banged up, and they beat the Giants. And I think in this spot, I think you're buying the Vikings at the peak of their value. And I don't never want to do that when it comes to betting. So I would be looking towards the Jets, but my problem with the Jets right now is that they look to be a complete mess. I mean, I don't know what Robert Saleh is doing. They lost that game last week against the Denver Broncos, where at one point, Bo Nix had -7 passing yards. So I don't know how to back this Jets team, especially when you look at the fact that Aaron Rodgers is banged up, and you look at the fact that Brian Flores he's put together defensive game plans which have befuddled every single quarterback they face. So this is Jets or pass, but I'm completely staying away from this one.
House?
Dream's point is absolutely on the money. The play would be on the Jets because of, the Vikings position, but we're in a kind of competing trends land here. In these international games, favorites have dominated. I think it's something crazy like 34-10 to the favorite, against the spread. And I absolutely adore the notion of Brian Flores' defense going up against immobile Aaron Rodgers and the one-dimensional Nathaniel Hackett. I couldn't believe this when I was doing the research. The Jets are averaging through 4 weeks this season 4.8 yards per play. Let me tell you what it was last year with Zach Wilson. 4.7 yards per play. The Jets have been held to 265 yards or less 3 times, 3 out of their 4 games already. They have 8 offensive touchdowns through 4 games. I don't, Garrett Wilson, there's an MIA out, missing persons alert for Garrett Wilson. I don't know what the Jets are doing, and I'm positive that Nathaniel Hackett doesn't know what the Jets are doing. I also, in terms of looking at the success of teams abroad, we really going to invest in the Jets organization? Do we really think that that's a team that's going to be prepared to take the whole thing on the road, go over there, different time zone, map it all out, work out all the international aspect of it, and be prepared to play? The Vikings were there 2 years ago, and they were favorites of 3 points, and they won by 3 against the Saints. The last time the Jets were in London was 2021. They lost by a touchdown to Atlanta, but this is a different coaching situation for the Jets. I am not going to back the Jets here, JJ.
I get it. And that was Saleh's first year, House. Zach Wilson was his quarterback. They were expected to maybe even go and win that game against Atlanta, and they were not ready to play, and they got off to a dreadful start in the game. I think Raheem is hitting on something that's very important with this game, and it's the idea that you're getting the Vikings at the best of their number, right? Like, you're getting the Vikings overvalued in this spot. You can't ignore that. You can't run away from that. It's as clear as day. But there is a glaring coaching mismatch in this game. You have one of the best coaching staffs in the NFL against a coaching staff I have absolutely no faith in and absolutely no trust in. And that's my problem with this game. And that's why I don't... This is another one of these toss-ups. I'm probably going to either bet the Vikings or I'm not betting the game. That's kind of the way I look at it. There is no way I can take Saleh and the Jet coaching staff against this coaching staff in Minnesota with the way they're humming, with the way they're cooking. I know I'm not getting a great number on the Vikings, but that's the way I see it. Now, the next game, I have a very strong feel on, Raheem. That would be the Buffalo Bills as a small favorite against their old buddy Stephon Diggs and the Houston Texans. Now, Buffalo, looked very underwhelming last week. Sunday Night Football, bad spot. Ravens had him basically right where they wanted him on a short week. Houston, you've watched them for most of this year. Despite the fact that they're winning games, they are leaving a lot to be desired. I think this is a great get-right spot for the Bills. I really do. I know they have some concerns on the offensive line. I know we got to watch Deion Dawkins and his status later on in the week. I get the sense this is Josh Allen with a little FU to Stephon Diggs. Hey, I don't need you anymore. I'm going to go and torch your team. I'm going to take names, and I'm going to kick ass in the process. I love Buffalo this week, Raheem. I have not been impressed by the Texans. I am not putting too much stock in what I saw from the Bills last week. Give me Buffalo, laying the point. I love it. It's one of my best bets of the week.
So I initially was on the same page as you, and I really was, because when you look at this Texans team, they haven't been good at all. You're talking about a team who was 22nd in offensive success rate, 28th in EPA per play. Bobby Slowick, for whatever reason, he tends to run so much on first down, and Joe Mixon has been hurt, and they haven't been able to get right. And you look at the fact that the Bills, they got blown out last week, but they're coming into this game with a ton of injuries. Khalil Shakir, he has an ankle injury. He hasn't practiced. Deion Dawkins on the offensive line, he has a hamstring injury. He hasn't practiced. Then you lose another linebacker, Terrell Bernard. They already lost Matt Milano. So this is a team that's super banged up and going on the road to play the Texans. And you look at the Texans before the season started, they were 1.5-point favorites. Now they're 1-point dogs. So I think when you look at the injuries, when you look at the fact that, the Texans haven't been able to get right, I think they're being a little bit undervalued here. So I would probably look towards the Texans here, to be honest with you.
And I will tell you, I'm having the same kind of challenge here because I'm prepared to load into the Bills. I think Houston's fraudulent, to be honest with you. But the thing that I want to see is the injury report, because if Joe Mixon is a go and there's indications over the course of the week into the weekend that Joe Mixon is healthy, then I like Houston. For whatever reason, they insist, Dream mentioned it, on running the football at early downs. They're the worst rushing team in the NFL, which is a shocking thing to say with the Dallas Cowboys out there, but it's true. And I have no concern whatsoever about the Texans up against the Bills defense. Baltimore exploited the inability of the Bills defense to stop the run. Well, the Texans can't run the ball without Joe Mixon. Dameon Pierce is also questionable, but doesn't matter to me. It's Mixon or nobody. And if the Texans can't establish anything with the run, the Bills have two elite cornerbacks. They're pretty damn good against the pass. So I would be loading up on the Bills if this was in Buffalo. But in Houston like this, it's a little bit of a lean towards the Bills, but I'm not going to jump into it with both feet.
I'm all in on Buffalo this week, guys. We'll see. And I know those offensive line concerns could be problematic. I just have not been impressed by what I've seen with this Houston Texan team. Now, the other more key game at 1 o'clock. House, this is a real juicy game. You have Baltimore. They've righted the ship. They took care of Buffalo. They took care of the Cowboys. They're 2-2. They really should be 3-1 or 4-0, if we're being perfectly honest. They choked the Raider game away. Isaiah Likely is inches away against Kansas City, or maybe we're talking about the 4-0 Ravens. They're road favorite against Cincinnati, who, yes, beat the Carolina Panthers last week. Cincinnati has been deplorable on defense. Anybody, and I mean anybody, has been able to move the football all over that defense. That said, Bengals have had some success matching up with the Ravens. This has been an evenly matched rivalry. Thoughts, House? Ravens on the road laying points. What do we think?
Yeah, it has been evenly matched, but lately Baltimore's been getting the best of Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. 1-3 against Baltimore the last couple years, and Burrow averaging less than 6 yards per attempt with a passer rating of right around 85. The Ravens 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 games at Cincinnati, so they have no problem at all going to Cincy. And just in general, on the road, the Ravens 7-3 against the spread over their last 10. Lamar 5-2 against the spread in his last 7 games at Cincy, very comfortable. And the thing that really tilts this is Cincinnati is the worst run defense in the entire NFL, and we just watched Baltimore with its 3-head rushing attack dismantle the Buffalo Bills. A rushing defense that we didn't think was bottom of the barrel, but boy, did they exploit it. I think this is going to be a run up and down the field situation for these Baltimore Ravens. I don't see any scenario under which Cincinnati can slow them down. It's literally the blueprint that the Washington C words used against the Cincinnati team and went in and scored 38 points in Cincinnati. I think the Bengals are in for a rough one, Dream.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the rushing defense for the Cincinnati Bengals, because that's the first thing that popped into my mind when I saw this matchup. If you go back to week 1, Ramondre Stevenson, he ran for 120 yards. He forced 10 missed tackles. 118 of those came after contact. And if you look at the rush yards per opponent, 170 against the Patriots, 149 against the Chiefs, 108 against the Commanders, 155 against the Panthers, who were playing from behind and were down 31-14. So if those offenses did that, what is Derrick Henry going to do? Derrick Henry has been incredible. I mean, he's been an offensive player of the year candidate. So the way I approach this is I think you can look at Derrick Henry prop escalators. His over-under is 90.5 yards, minus 105. You can get plus 100 at plus 155, plus 110 yards at plus 230, plus 120 yards at plus 340. You have to take this shot with this rushing defense. However, the one thing I will say is that the Bengals are also a pass funnel defense as well. So anything that you want, anything that Baltimore wants to do, they want to run the ball, they want to pass the ball, they can do. The Patriots had 290 passing yards. The Chiefs had 286. The Commanders had 356. The Panthers had 375. So the sharp money is going to be on the Bengals in this match, but I can tell you that because the Bengals were initially minus 1.5 point favorites on the look ahead before this season started. Now you're at plus 2.5, plus 3. The sharps are going to say that's too much because the Bengals should be able to get whatever they want on offense as well. But I'm not going to do that. This is a same game parlay special. I'm going to be taking Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers. I'm going to be taking Joe Burrow. Any props that I can get to go over, this is the game to do it.
See, I'm with you on this game, Raheem. I know a lot of these sharp trends are going to point towards Cincinnati. They're desperate. Joe Burrow against that Ravens secondary, going to be able to make plays. Maybe he will. How is Cincinnati slowing down Lamar, Henry, and Justice Hill? I have an answer. So there is no way I can come out of the gate saying, yeah, I'm going to go and take the Bengals plus 2.5. No. Got to see it first from Cincinnati before they work their way into the circle of trust. To me, if you're betting this game, folks, it's a Baltimore or pass spot. They've been the far better team over the first 4 weeks of the year. Need some evidence that Cincinnati can give you a competitive, spirited effort. All right, when we come back, we will get to Raheem's Cowboys. Extra time to prepare. Fantastic Sunday night matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got takes on that. We'll also get to me, a live dog, a team that's not particularly good, that I'm going to be betting on Sunday. All that and more. East Coast Bias Boys coming right back. All right, welcome back. Let's get to Sunday Night Football. Raheem, your Cowboys, they got their win on Thursday night against the New York Giants. Now they get extra time to prepare, and they'll get an angry, ticked-off Steeler team. Steelers at home on Sunday night. We know what the trends are for Tomlin historically. Tremendous dog. Not a great favorite. Your Cowboys are getting 2.5 for him. You biting?
No, I am not biting at all. This Cowboys team is not good at all. And now you're missing Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. We can't run the ball. We don't have a ton of weapons outside of CeeDee Lamb. Now, there are rumors that we're thinking about trading for Devontae Adams. If that happens, I have to reevaluate my process on this game. but I just think the Steelers are the better team. So I would lay it with the Steelers.
House?
Yeah, I'm joining Dream on this. Can't get there with this Dallas offense. It's a matchup of the 30th rushing offense in the Steelers against the 31st rushing defense in the Cowboys. And that 31st rushing defense in the Cowboys, like Dream said, is missing its two most important players. So I'm on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh figured out a way to waste a great performance by Justin Fields. Very quietly, Justin Fields is coming in. I mean, the only entity stopping Justin Fields is Arthur Smith. Let Justin Fields cook a little bit, Art. We don't need to run the ball every time. I was really impressed, and it was part of the thesis for why I thought Pittsburgh as a favorite going into Indianapolis was not that bad of a bet. The progress of Justin Fields this season in this offense and the immediate relationship that he has with Pickens. I mean, look what it took for Pittsburgh to lose that game. Pickens fumbled in the end zone. They had turnovers. They had the unexpected. And this is always something that will get a defense that's ready to pin its ears back against and Anthony Richardson, the offense that they imagined. All of a sudden, Joe Flacco's in there. Well, you know who's comfortable playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers? Joe effing Flacco. And that guy stood back there with poise and helped guide the Colts. So I think, you'll have those kinds of losses, and it is karma for Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh gets plenty of these kinds of wins, right, where it's turnovers and unexpected stuff that works in their favor. But I do like them this week against the Cowboys, JJ.
I'm right there with you guys. Make it 3 for 3. The Steelers, to be one of my best bets of the week. More than comfortable laying 2.5. Way too many injuries. Way too many issues for the Cowboys. And I think the Steelers coming off a loss here, like that little chip on their shoulder that maybe they wouldn't have had if indeed they go and beat Indianapolis. I like the spot that much more off of a loss. Quickly, House, before we get to best bets and we say goodbye, your C words, we gave them all the praise in the world on Monday. Any concern about this spot with Cleveland laying 3.5 now? Quite the turn.
Tremendous concern. Enormous concern. This is the best defense that the C-words will have faced all season by a long shot. This is a diabolical situation and a diabolical game. If my recommendation would be to not bet it under any circumstances, but if you must bet it, it's got to be the Browns. I mean, the look ahead for this was Cleveland -1.5, -2. For it to have moved 5 points, it's a dramatic. Washington, to their credit, took great advantage against the two worst defenses in the NFL. And God bless Jayden Daniels and God bless Cliff Kingsbury and all of the rotating cast on the offensive side of the ball that's producing these historic returns for our rookie quarterback. It's wonderful, but the Browns are a different animal altogether. Deshaun actually looked pretty damn good last week against the Raiders. He was not the reason that they lost that football game. It's a step up in class. Washington's offense has not seen a defense like this so far this season, and it's a tough spot. So Browns or pass, Dream?
It's definitely Browns or pass, but I just think this Cleveland offense is very concerning, and you definitely need to find out the status of Jedrick Willis, Jack Conklin on the offensive line. This Cleveland offense, they're 32nd in offensive DVOA, and they've played the 32nd ranked schedule of opposing defenses. They played the Cowboys, the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Raiders. 7th easiest by success rate and 9th easiest by EPA per play. So if you can't dominate those defenses, how am I supposed to even be encouraged by the fact that you're playing the Commanders? Now, the sharp money is all going to be on the Browns here because, like House said, this look-ahead line had the Browns as favorite. So a lot of sharps are going to say, well, this is going too far. So I agree under that pretense. I just don't know if I necessarily want to back this team. So it's either Browns or pass, but I'm chilling.
Absolute stay away from me. I'm not getting burned with the C words again. No way, no how. Not after last week. Before we say goodbye, best bets to send you on your way for the weekend. We're coming right back. All right, It's best bets time, week 5, and hopefully the play I like, I actually stick with. Raheem and I gave out the Raiders. Of course, I didn't give out the Raiders on the Ringer Sunday pregame because I was concerned. Hey, Adams was out, Crosby was out, and I missed the boat. I missed out on getting myself another win. What are you going to do? House, week 5. Hopefully you are steadfast on this one. What's your best bet?
Well, you're letting me go first, which is inconsiderate to Dream because we have the same best bet, I suspect. I am all over the Chicago Bears laying 3.5 points at home against Carolina. I think this Bears defense is going to absolutely punish the Carolina offensive line and poor Andy Dalton. On the other side of the ball, this is exactly the kind of opportunity for Caleb Williams to continue to make progress. He got the benefit of going up against a completely depleted Rams defense. He gets the same thing, probably even a better situation against this Carolina defense that suddenly has no linebackers whatsoever, no NFL linebackers in Carolina. But really, to me, this is about the Bears defense and what they're going to do to poor Mr. Dalton. I'm laying the 3.5 with the Bears.
Yeah, so House kind of gave away what my best bet was. We have 3 rookie quarterbacks who are favorites this week, which is quite amazing. And, you know, when you look at this line, the Chicago Bears, they're laying 3.5 to the Carolina Panthers. Guess who else they were laying 3.5 to? The Los Angeles Rams with Matthew Stafford. So are you telling me that Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay should be catching the same amount of points as the Carolina Panthers with Andy Dalton and this defense? This defense is absolutely abysmal. You're talking about 28th in success rate, 26th in EPA per play. And like House said, they don't have any linebackers because they're all in the hospital. Shaq Thompson, Jewel, both of those guys are out, and they couldn't stop anybody when they were in. So if you ask me, the Bears, I know they've been getting lucky. They've been getting outgained in 3 out of their last 4 games, but they will not get outgained in this game. I guarantee it. And I like the Bears to be able to win this game. I mean, they have a dominant defense, 7th best in TD drive percentage. The Panthers, 3rd worst. They're giving up touchdowns on 35% of their drives. Caleb Williams should have one of his best days of the season this week. I love the Bears here. And I want to give you guys a bonus bet just because me and House have the same one. I think that Saints line is a little bit too high at +5.5. You want to look at the injury report, but this line is probably going to go down to 5 or 4 by game time. So grab that now.
Quickly, you guys riding with the Bears? I'm holding my nose. Giants, extra time to prepare against the Seattle team that played on a short week. The Giants will keep that game within the number. I'm not saying they win outright. I know there are concerns with Neighbors and whether or not he's going to play. The Giants will cover 6 against the Seattle Seahawks. For Raheem, House, JJ signing off. Good work by the boys. We'll be back Sunday with the Ringer Sunday pregame at 11. Back here next week. Be good, everybody.